Hi, my name is Julian Geis and I'm a researcher at the Department of Digital Transformation and Energy Systems at TU Berlin. And this is a short overview of our latest paper, Price Formation in a Highly Renewable Sector-Coupled Energy System, published in Energy Economics in 2026. And in this paper, we had a look how the price formation on the electricity market changed from today's system until a fully decarbonized system in 2045. To understand this, let's start with how electricity prices work today. The market clearing price today is set by the most expensive generator that is still needed to meet demand. That's classic merit order. And crucially, most of the technologies in that merit order have non-zero marginal costs, like coal plants, gas plants, and so on. Now imagine a system where most of your generation comes from wind and solar, technologies with essentially zero marginal costs. As more of that zero-cost generation enters the market, the supply curve shifts to the right and prices fall, sometimes all the way to zero or even below. But renewables don't always shine or blow. In hours where generation falls short, you still need other technologies to cover demand. And those technologies need to recover their costs somehow. So they might set very high prices in these hours. This creates three interconnected problems. First, renewables cannibalize their own market value. The more you build, the lower the price you receive. Second, price volatility increases as the system might oscillate between zero and extreme scarcity prices. And third, this makes it much harder for any technology to recover its investment costs from energy revenues alone. To better understand these dynamics, we investigate how price formation changes as we move from today's system to a fully decarbonized one, looking specifically at which technology set the price and how the shape of the price duration curve evolves along the way. To answer these questions, we use PyPSA-DE, an open source sector-coupled energy system model for Germany built on the PyPSA framework. The model co-optimizes investment and operation across electricity, heating, transport and industry with myopic foresight in 5-year steps from 2020 to 2045. That gives us 6 snapshots of the system along a CO2 pathway consistent with Germany's climate targets from today's carbon-intensive system all the way to a climate-neutral system in 2045. For this study, we model Germany as a single node, which simplifies the tracking of price-setting technologies while keeping the full sector coupling complexity intact. Let's now come to the methods. So the methodological contribution of the paper is a way to extract the full supply and demand curves from the optimization model for every single hour. The idea is to use the dual variables or shadow prices of the nodal balance constraints as proxies for market clearing electricity prices. Then, through the stationarity conditions of the KKT system, we can derive the ask and bid prices of every technology in the model. For a renewable generator, the ask price is simply its variable operating cost, typically close to zero. For conversion technologies like gas turbine or electrolyzer, it's more involved. The ask or bid is determined by the revenues and costs at all connected energy carrier nodes, adjusted for efficiency and variable costs. And for storage, and this is the key insight, the ask price is not driven by an exogenous fuel cost, but by the marginal storage value, which is the endogenous opportunity cost of discharging now versus keeping that energy for later. And that's what makes storage fundamentally different from other technologies in terms of price formation. Finally, we identify the price setter in each hour. In the ideal case, it's simply the marginal technology, the one whose bid matches the clearing price and which is running but not at full capacity. In practice, model degeneracy and numerical inaccuracies mean there can be multiple candidates. In those cases, we apply a heuristic, we prioritize supply-side technologies over demand-side, and among those, the least flexible ones, measured by the variance of their bids. Let's now come to the results. Here you can see what this looks like in a practice. Both panels show the market clearing for February 17th at 6 a.m., a winter morning with moderate renewable output. In 2025 on the left, the supply side opens with around 40 gigawatts of near zero cost renewables, followed by fossil generators filling the remaining gap. On the demand side, flexible sector-coupled loads bid into the market alongside conventional demand. The price is set by a gas CHP plant at around 85 euros per megawatt hour, a classic fuel cost-driven outcome. By 2045, on the right side, the supply has been stripped back to just a handful of technologies alongside renewables. But what really stands out is the demand side, which has grown now to over 800 gigawatts, driven by heat pumps, battery electric vehicles, and electrolyzers. The price is now set by battery dispatch, whose ask price converges with the bid price of electrolysis, both reflecting the same endogenous marginal value of stored energy rather than any exogenous fuel cost. What we just saw for a single hour in 2025 and 2045 reflects a much broader trend. If we aggregate the price setters across all hours and all model years, we get a clear picture of how market clearing changes over the transition. So on the supply side, coal and lignite gradually lose their role and are eventually phased out entirely. Gas takes over first, and from 2035, hydrogen fuel turbines increasingly share that role. Wind and solar begin setting prices from 2025 onwards, but the most striking development is the rise of battery discharge, which becomes responsible for about 25% of all price setting hours by 2045. Demand technologies play only a minor role in price setting until 2025, but from 2030 onwards, battery electric vehicle chargers and pumped hydro start setting prices, and by 2035, battery charging and electrolysis become dominant demand-side price setters. Overall, the demand share grows from just 3% in 2020 to 38% by 2045, which is a direct consequence of deeper sector coupling that introduces large volumes of flexible electric loads that actively participate in market clearing and stabilize prices. Let's now have a look at the price duration. So the price setter tells us who clears the market, but the price duration curve tells us what the resulting price landscape actually looks like. Each line here shows all hourly prices for one model year, sorted from highest to lowest. The first thing to notice is the overall shape. In earlier years, the curve shows several relatively stable price plateaus, a direct reflection of discrete ask prices of fossil fuel generators. As we move towards 2045, those steps dissolve into a much smoother, more continuous distribution driven by the growing role of storage and weather-dependent renewables. Two forces are at work here. Rising CO2 prices increase the spread between fossil fuel bids, pushing scarcity prices higher. At the same time, higher renewable penetration shifts the merit order curve to the right, creating more hours where renewables set near zero prices. Storage then fills the gaps between these extremes, smoothing out what would otherwise be very abrupt transitions. The most striking year is 2035, the peak of the transition, where both effects are simultaneously at their strongest. The highest scarcity prices and the most zero price hours coexist. After that, as flexibility catches up with the renewable build-out, the curve stabilizes somewhat by 2045. Now, to summarize, price formation transitions from a fossil fuel-driven supply-side phenomenon to a storage and demand-driven one. Also, price duration curves evolve from stable discrete levels to smoother, weather-dependent distributions. Sector coupling, especially power-to-heat, electrolysis, and electric vehicles, create a demand-side price floor that prevents the worst zero-price outcomes. And the most challenging period is the transition itself, around 2035, when renewable capacity outpaces flexibility. The policy implications are clear here. What is very important would be dynamic pricing, coordinated storage investment, and a balanced deployment of renewables and flexibility. So thanks for watching. You can find the full paper and open source code via the QR code or at the DOI shown on screen. Feel free to reach out. I would be happy to discuss.